Howdy folks, I'm Hank Sheffer, and welcome to another true life story right here with Larry Hedrick on Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.
Well, I suppose we all know our history well enough to remember the First and Second Battle of Bull Run during the Civil War. Now, the Yankees used to call a battle by the closest river, so that was Bull Run River that was named after. But on the other side, they named it after the closest town. So the South called it the Battle of Manassas. But did you know that there was a Battle of Bull Run right here in Arizona? Now, I'm going to tell this story in recognition of one of our film crew who had three relatives that were in this story. He had Amos Cox, Sylvester Hewlett, and Matthew Caldwell, a great-great-grandfather, a great-great-uncle, and a great-great-cousin, all in the Mormon Battalion. Our story starts at the beginning of the Mexican War in 1846, where the President Polk and the leaders of the Mormon Church agreed to allow an army to be recruited out of the Mormon religion. The first time ever or ever since that an entire army was raised in a religious organization. They marched from, their leader was their ultimate leader was Brigadier General Fremont, who was already in California, and the local leader was Colonel Allen. They raised a regiment in Iowa and marched to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where they were outfitted. Each man received a weapon, all the accoutrements that went with it, and an allowance for their uniforms. Most of the guys sent at least a portion of their uniform allowance money back to their families. And they began the trek to Santa Fe. Colonel Allen became deathly sick on the route and eventually passed away. And one Colonel Cook was put in command in place of him. The battalion was able to appoint their own sergeants and things of that nature, but it was really led by Union officers. Colonel Cook, one of the men that was involved was a second lieutenant by the name of Stoneman. That's the General Stoneman that was in charge of the Department of Arizona during the Indian Wars here and established Fort Pinnell and the Stoneman grade over where Silver King Mine was located and found because of the work on that road. And anyway, they departed Santa Fe, went down to Rio Grande, and across the extreme southern edge of what we know as Arizona today. When they got to the San Pedro River, they run across a herd of cattle. And as long as the cattle were quite a distance from them, they would run away from them. But when they surprised any of them, the bulls in the herd immediately attacked them. And here's the Battle of Bull Run. Amos Cox was the great-great-uncle of David Jones, who, by the way, is our cameraman. In fact, actually, David Jones is the founder of the Mysteries of Superstition Mountain. He's also, with his wife Jane, the editor of our program, and puts these stories together for us. Amos Cox was gored in the thigh and flipped 14 feet in the air. He had a 7-inch long, 3-inch wide wound in his thigh. And his great-great-grandfather, Matthew Caldwell, distinguished himself with Colonel Cook in the fact that one of the bulls was charging directly at them. And the colonel told Cox to run, but instead he stood his ground and dropped the bull, which slid right to their feet and died, and it saved them both from injury. And the colonel lauded Mr. Caldwell for his bravery, for standing in front of that charging bull. Several wagons were turned over. It was quite a mess, and by the time it was over, they counted about a score of dead bulls right in the immediate area, but others said that bulls that were wounded had died later, and some reports came in as many as 60 of them had been killed. Well, by the time that the Mormon Battalion got to California, Fremont had subdued all the opposition, and a fight was no longer necessary. There were three things about the Mormon Battalion that were kind of first. I already mentioned one of them was the fact that it was the first regiment ever raised by a religious organization. And the second thing was it was the longest trek that had ever been made by an infantry organization, of over 2,000 miles. And the third thing was the establishment of the wagon road that the Mormon Battalion made was almost exactly where the railroad was running and the highway that we know today. And actually, the Mormon Battalion paved the way for the Gadsden Purchase, which is where the actual boundaries of Arizona and Mexico are today. I want to close this off by reading part of the poem that was written by Levi Hancock about the bullfight. Under the command of Colonel Cook, when passing down San Pedro's brook, where cane grass growing rank and high was waving as the breeze passed by, there as we gained ascending ground, one from the grass with fearful bound, a wild, ferocious bull appeared, and challenged fight with horns upreared. The bulls with maddened fury raged, the men a skillful warfare raged, and some from danger had to flee and hide or climb up a tree. And when the fearful fight was o'er, and sound of musket was heard no more, at least a score of bulls were found, and 2 mules dead upon the ground.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.